I would like to talk to you all about a book called The Culture Map, which very well might be my favorite book of all time. It is a nonfiction book. I am a nonfiction fiend. And it's by a woman named Erin Meyer, and she is a cross-cultural business coach. So her job, which may be one of the coolest jobs of all time, is to, when, for example, somebody who is the president of a company, a C-suite level person at a company in, for example, Copenhagen or in Amsterdam, is going to Russia or China to open a new branch, to take over a new project, another country where there are very, I want to say big cultural differences, but that is on kind of the perceptive, obvious level. Because really, as this book gets at, there are big cultural differences between all countries, but between all people. And so I often talk about how we all speak our different cultural language, communication language based on our experiences. And I might have a different culture map or communication style, than somebody who grew up next door to me but had different experiences, or in the same country versus somebody who was across the world. We never know where other people are coming from. We should never assume that they're speaking the same quote-unquote language as we are. And we should always know where we stand on our culture map, as Erin Meyer calls it, and where other people stand. And so the book really goes through different chapters, and each chapter covers a different style of communication. So, giving positive feedback, giving negative feedback, building trust, showing respect, and all of these different ways that different countries do these things, different cultures, and really comparing them and using just hilarious anecdotes that I at least found hilarious, being a communication nerd, but also because I could relate to so many of them, not even on a business level. These are things that you're going to be able to relate to in your friendships, in your, romantic relationships, if you've had cross-cultural relationships, anything, perhaps even with close friends or family members who you might not realize how different your culture maps are. But it really is so fascinating and covers things from how people in, Southeast Asia, you need to be able to quote unquote read the air, and these subtle cues and messages that come from the way you ask something, the way you communicate it, an invitation you make or don't make. But nothing is ever concretely said. And the whole time you actually might be talking about something totally unrelated to the message or topic you're supposed to be communicating. Versus, in places such as the US, where she talks about how it is supposed to be extremely straightforward. The more times you say something, the more clear, the more clarity, the better. The more straightforward, the better. Tell people something, then tell them how you told them, and then, tell them what you just told them. Something along those lines. And so the book really just paints this incredible portrait for how richly colored all the different communication styles are in the world, how wrong we can have it without even knowing, and gives us an incredible toolbox which we can then use to deepen our relationships with other people from our own culture, and specifically with people from other cultures, in just such an interesting and informative way. And I can't stress enough how much I enjoyed reading this book and how much I laughed out loud, because I just identified with so many of the stories and the miscommunications And the lack of communication, whether it's because you're saying something and the other person is expecting you to send subtle messages, etc., etc. And it's just this amazing reminder that we all have different culture maps. We all speak different quote unquote languages. And we constantly have to work on better understanding our own and really always make sure we're conscientious of better understanding where the other person is coming from and the juxtaposition of our different cultures, our different maps, and our different languages. I'm not sure how many of you have seen the movie Boogie Nights, but I only recently had the pleasure of watching it. I lived in Chile for 2 years, and I lived with two amazing, amazing guys who I love so dearly, and recently went back and visited and stayed with them and one of my closest friends who now lives with them in my place. And they introduced me to this concept called the third eye, which is, I don't even know if I should get into this. This is like so personal. And I don't know if I should get into it. It's about smoking weed. I also don't know what I'm allowed to talk about and what I'm not. I don't know. I'll tell it and we can decide later on. The third eye is a concept that when you smoke marijuana, it gives you a new way of looking at things. It gives you a new perspective, a new dimension, if you will. And so I hadn't smoked weed in 10 years and recently smoked weed and it had gone well. And so when I was visiting them, and one of them has amazing locally grown at home weed, I agreed to smoke with them. Actually, this was Valentine's Day, and this is by far the best Valentine's Day I've ever had. Maybe the only good Valentine's Day ever, because I don't even know what Valentine's Day is usually supposed to be or to stand for. But this one happened on accident, and we all agreed it was the best Valentine's Day we've ever had. But essentially, they were teaching me how to smoke. And we ended up watching nature videos and watching some dance choreography videos. And there was this video I had seen countless times before, but I'd never seen it in this way. It was as if I were watching a completely different video. I was noticing different people dancing in the background. I was hearing different parts of the music. I was seeing things for the first time with a third eye. And so for some reason, out of all of this, the idea at the end, they decided that the next time we got high, we should watch Boogie Nights. And so this is maybe that's a whole part we just cut out of all of this, because I don't know how personal we want to make all of this. But for any of you who haven't seen Boogie Nights, I saw it recently and I'm here to tell you about it. So what I had, and I really truly try not to have expectations for things, because I think expectations are just setting ourselves up for either being disappointed or obviously in life, in experiences, whether you're moving somewhere, getting into a relationship, you have no idea what's going to happen. You have no clue. There's no way to predict. There are countless other factors that can happen. And so I really feel as though it's important to approach things with intentions, the intention to learn, the intention to commit yourself to something, the intention to whatever it is, but not the expectation. Expectation also seems more passive than intentions. You play a role in fulfilling those intentions versus what you expect to happen. Things happen to you versus you making them happen. And so I don't know what I was expecting or what my intention for the movie was, but I was watching it with my two guy friends, and I think in my head what I had imagined was this sort of dodgy, a bit skeezy, kind of funny, I don't know, pornish comedy about Mark Wahlberg getting into the porn industry. And I could not have been more surprised by that film. I'm going to call it a film instead of a movie. It was nothing I even could have expected. It really evolves into something so much deeper than any kind of comedy or thing about porn itself could be. It really becomes a cultural statement piece. And there are so many subtleties, and there are so many kind of cultural critiques that weave their way into the script and into their performance and into what becomes a bit of a disturbing but fascinating kind of way the events in the film unfold. And so I really found it to be surprising, profound, and really appreciated the way it took advantage of the opportunity and taking something that could have so easily been mainstream, simply done, cliche, and taking the opportunity to put their voice behind it and share a different perspective and share a cultural criticism. And I really would highly recommend it to anybody, if not for kind of just the bizarre shock value and if nothing else, the entertainment. And then there's the whole part about Mark Wahlberg's dick and the prosthetic and what have you. But beyond all of that, it goes so much deeper. Pun not intended. So the other day, I found myself thinking, I had become a bit frustrated with an interaction I had with somebody, and I found myself thinking about the difference between curiosity and criticism when approaching an interaction, a conversation with another person. Whether it's giving feedback, whether it's trying to understand a new concept or, a concept that's foreign to us that we're not familiar with, whether it's a confrontation, an argument, or getting to know somebody on a very basic level. There are ways that we can ask people things. There are ways that we can respond, which really come from a place of curiosity and a tone of curiosity. And I always stress that, particularly in confrontational cases or in arguments, curiosity is one of the most important things. Because the fact of the matter is, going into whatever argument or situation in general, we never know. Go back and listen to our episode with Nick Epley. We never know what the other person is thinking. We make a lot of false assumptions. We feel like we know what they're thinking, but we don't. And the research actually shows that the closer we are to the person, the better we know them, the more likely it is that we are making false assumptions and overestimating how well we know what they're thinking or feeling. And so truly approaching things from the standpoint or the understanding that you don't know anything and wanting to explore the matter, asking questions, really just trying to get a roadmap And, kind of a look into their mind through asking. And so that's one way that we can navigate any kind of interaction, that kind of innocent curiosity that comes off as not being aggressive, that comes off as genuine interest. And then I think there are ways that, again, in arguments can come off more aggressive if instead of talking from I and how, I feel this, I need this, if you're talking about the other person, that's criticism. That's not curiosity. If you're telling them what they feel, you're telling them what they did, rather than asking them how they felt, asking them what, from their perspective, it is they did or how they made you feel. That's curiosity versus criticism. And so the funny part about all this is my interaction wasn't even confrontational. It was somebody asking about BBXX, and they, I didn't know this person, and I didn't particularly need to give them my time. And I think actually how much I open up about BBXX, I've realized is something that, to me, it's an intimate topic, because I think it is so much a part of who I am, and my passion and the time and energy and blood, sweat, and tears I put into it is kind of like your family baggage, not to mention that BBXX was probably created as a result of all my family baggage. But it's not something that you just, right off the bat with a total stranger, you decide to dig into and open up and let them dig around and figure out whatever they want. It depends on what their intentions are. It depends on how well you know them, how well you want to get to know them, and really the way they go about it. And so this person really just straight off the bat, I had told them I didn't really feel like talking about work several times before. Actually, another day, the first time I had met them. And then this time had clued into not wanting to talk about it again, but, they kept pushing. So I eventually answered and tried to be vague, because I really didn't feel like, getting into a whole spiel. I wanted to, this was on my time off after a long day, and really wanted to, be outdoors and with friends and engage with my other friends and talk to the people I was there to see, rather than this person I had no relationship with. I didn't know, and frankly had no idea if I ever was going to see them again or wanted to. And so trying to, navigate how much time and energy you want to invest into a stranger and the favors you're doing them by opening up for the sake of their curiosity or criticism in some cases, versus, wanting to have boundaries and engage in ways that make you feel better. And so they, eventually pushed to where the vague answers weren't standing up and weren't really making sense. And I was given the choice of basically lying and making stuff up, which just felt weird, or I kind of said, okay, well, I guess my only choice is to lean in, and kind of gave them this whole explanation and about what we're trying to do, blah, blah, blah. And he just looked at me and said, do you have any idea how difficult that would be, and how many years and how much energy that would take to pull off what you're trying to do? And I just looked at him in total disbelief and said, yeah, actually I do. I do, because it has been a couple years and all of my time and energy. And so instead of that kind of being this clue, he then kept pushing and was like, well, how are you making money, and the business model and all these questions. And I didn't feel as though this person was approaching it from a place of curiosity. His tone, how swiftly he had a rebuttal for every answer I gave him and kind of poked holes in it, or just had his kind of rally back prepared, didn't feel like he was giving it any time to sink in. They didn't feel like exploratory questions. They felt like questions meant to measure, meant to, be compared to whatever picture he had in his head or system he understood for what this should look like or how it should work. And in the end, I told him, I'm really sorry, I don't want to talk about this, and I'd really love to, engage with my friends who I haven't been able to see in a long time, pre-coronavirus. And he made me feel bad. He looked at me and was like, well, I told you all about my work, and, now you're not willing to share. That doesn't seem fair. And I really went home later that night and I couldn't get this experience out of my head. I felt, I don't want to say dirty. I felt, it all felt tainted. It tainted the rest of my evening. It tainted my own perception of myself and of my company. And it just wasn't a pleasant experience. And I realized that, you really have to be careful when you are asking other people or any sort of interaction. It's a stranger, fighting with a family member, a pleasant exchange with somebody at a coffee shop. We really have to be careful how we go about things and really do a check on our own perspective, recognize that we know nothing, and how we approach things with curiosity, and make sure it doesn't come across as criticism. And the craziest part of this all is that I imagine it wasn't his intention in any way to make me feel criticized. His goal was to better understand something he didn't know. And in his head, maybe he was trying to better understand it because he was curious. He may have been authentically curious, but he did not approach the matter from a place through the lens and through the voice of curiosity in a way that in the end he probably walked away from and thought nothing of it. And I, then was left thinking about this over and over again. And so I really just wanted to point out the subtle but extremely vital difference between curiosity and criticism, and also just remind people of our right and our ownership over our own boundaries. And if by telling someone you don't want to talk about something, they don't respect that and they make you feel bad, or you don't want to do something or engage in some sort of behavior, activity, go somewhere, talk about something, whatever it is. And if they don't respect that, particularly, even before, if you tell people you don't want to and they don't respect that, let alone if you then go out on a limb to engage with somebody and give them your time, energy, sacrifice, whatever it is. And then even after that, if they don't respect your boundary and the sacrifice you're making, or your power and your right to disengage at any time, then those are not the people that you want to surround yourself with. If people don't make you feel good, if people actively don't respect those boundaries and bring negative energy and make you doubt yourself and what you're doing and these sort of things, those aren't the people who are curious. And those aren't the people who you should give your time, energy, and your own curiosity to exploring further relationships with. So, a topic that came up the other day, came up in my own mind, where a lot of things come up quite frequently. A lot of ideas I play around with and often don't share. And so what I'm trying to do is take advantage of this time and this opportunity when I know people, would like to have more content, when I kind of have more time to reflect. And I've been I made the goal of, well, this is something I should just share I can do that in another video or in a story. Okay. So, I'm actually just going to start this video. The other day, one of my closest friends told me he's a writer, and he got a meeting with a director whom he had admired for a very long time about possibly picking up a pilot that they had written. And I said, well, we have to celebrate. That's amazing. And he goes, well, anything could still happen. It might not go anywhere for all we know. And it really just brought me back to this concept of small wins that a friend of mine introduced me to. And the concept of small wins has to do with the fact that I think we so often get caught up in the big picture, the ultimate goal, the finish line, and this kind of metric or measurement that is all or nothing. And we judge our success, how content we are, our joy, fulfillment from that project based on that end goal. And yes, there's the expression, the journey is the destination, which is quite cliche, but the fact of the matter is, we don't stand a chance at getting to the finish line if we don't have all of these small building blocks. It would be impossible. Therefore, what you build that road to the finish line with is in a way more important than that. Just literally, it's called a line because it's so small, it's so insignificant compared to the entire road leading up to it that we are paving with these smaller accomplishments, these smaller steps. And so if we don't acknowledge all of that work, all of that effort, blood, sweat, and tears that we're making along the way, then first of all, that finish line won't feel as good when we cross it because we've just kind of shoved aside all the work we've done. Second of all, if we don't get there, which oftentimes we probably won't, if we have ambitious goals, we probably won't, then are we really just sacrificing all the work we've made along the way and not giving it the proper, not just acknowledgement, but celebration that it deserves? And so I think this idea of small wins is extremely, extremely powerful on a large scale, but also on a very simple, small scale, because it gives you something to latch onto. If you can just write down one small win you have a day. And so I did this for a week and have continued to. And sometimes, a small win is that new contract, that meeting. Sometimes a small win is an incredible hike. Sometimes a small win is celebrating a failure. Sometimes a small win is not working at all, and that one is actually a very big win. So sometimes these small wins are actually the huge wins because they are what shape our behaviors, what shapes our habits, it's what shapes our focus and the entire road we're on, which determines where we'll ever be able to get to or not. And so I'd love to just really encourage people to reclaim the power of your small wins. Be sure to acknowledge them. It also feels great to share them, celebrate them in some way. I'm going to do a whole nother piece on celebrating every day. Not the day itself, but, celebrating things like this, small wins or non-existent. You don't even have to win. Just living life more with the intention and the kind of joy that comes from celebrating. It's just so much fun, but I will get back to that in another point. So I'd really just encourage you to, for 1 week, try it. Sometimes you can even make them really entertaining things. If you're going on your first virtual date, that can be a small win. If you tried some bizarre, it can be anything. So try it. Maybe you even want to make an accountability group, get friends in on it, even just one other person, or write it down yourself. But I'd encourage you to do that. And my small win for today is finally forcing myself to record this and to be in front of you all on the video, recording the audio portion. And it's a big win, right? Because this is going to be launching a whole new style of content we're going to be doing, more casual, more short format. So it's a small win, but the small wins in the end are really the big wins. So a couple weeks ago, the other day in quarantine time, who knows these days? But recently I was talking with one of my closest friends, and he told me about a big project that he had gotten. It was kind of a new contract. He's a writer, and it was a pilot that they got picked up by somebody he had admired for a very long time. And I think he got the meeting scheduled, but I remember telling him that he needed to celebrate that. And he said, well, we don't know yet. It could not go anywhere for all we know. And it really just brought me back to this idea another friend introduced me to of small wins. And so the other week I made it my theme of the week to celebrate a small win every day and kind of take note of what it was. Because I think we so often get caught up in the big picture, the finish line, the ultimate goal, that we kind of just shrug aside a lot of the small wins on the way that get us there without realizing that, one, I'm not recording. So over the past couple weeks, with everything that has happened with the coronavirus outbreak and quarantine and boundaries are changing, be it in the sense of, travel, borders, boundaries between people, space, the entire world basically as we know it has been changed in so many ways that I don't think any of us could have guessed only, a few weeks ago, let alone months ago, and would never have expected. And so I first want to obviously acknowledge the tragedy of the situation and the countless negative consequences that are coming from it, from, loss, people being separated, people losing people, the entire healthcare system, and the amount of stress and the, job, everything. I could list off all the negative things, but that's really not the point of this. The point of this is that I think amidst this fascinating time that we are faced with, whether we like it or not, there are so many new perspectives and different ways of looking at things. And I do think that in a way we can look at coronavirus presenting us with an invitation to connect in a completely different way, connect with those close to us in a new way, connect with new people about a commonality we never had before. I mean, when else in the history of the world, I don't know, has every person on earth been able to relate to one another through a common shared experience we are all having at this time? And so I think if we choose to look at it in a different way, we can choose to take advantage of the opportunity to connect more deeply with other people, the opportunity to reflect and connect more deeply with ourselves, as people have been saying, when you can't go outside, to look inside, look inwards, and really get to know ourselves better and engage in the slow life, in slow social. When else would we be doing pottery, playing board games, all these other different ways to engage when we're forced to put the brakes on? All the noise is tuned out, the small distractions, the things that don't matter. Something like this, what it does do is really it reminds us what actually matters and how many things we stress about that don't. And so I just wanted to really take a moment to acknowledge this as being a very interesting opportunity and encourage people to take advantage of it, because this is extremely unique, and although extremely negative overall, unfortunately, besides the things we are hopefully already doing to help mitigate the situation, there's not too much else beyond that we can do apart from really, connecting and empowering ourselves with new knowledge, with new understanding of other people, of humanity, of society, of how we can come together, and really using this time to empower ourselves with tools, capacities, knowledge, and connection that can help us withstand, if not prevent, the next, whatever it is, wave of crisis that could hit us next. And as we now know, there's never a way to know when it will happen, but there is a way to be better prepared than we have been. And so what I want to do with BBXX, and I've been thinking a lot about this and how we can better help people and stay connected, and we're doing a lot of things on the back end and trying to prep a lot of new material. And so I've had a lot of stress as to, we aren't being there for people enough, but we really want to take this time to start putting out more content. And I already had the idea in mind to release a new sub-series of our podcast. And so what we'll be doing is releasing content more often, slightly different content, some short format, some less produced, some more casual, more intimate, maybe some crowdsourced content even. And so we're really excited to try and help you guys all through this situation as best we can and help you take advantage of the opportunity to connect with yourself and others, which is, what we try and do at BBXX. So it's been very interesting to be in this moment in the world when what everyone needs is to be better connected, specifically via a digital medium. And so we really hope we can be there for you guys as best we can. And any way you can think of, any suggestions, any requests, ideas, suggestions, anything at all, we would love to hear it. We would love to know how we can best provide for you and help you through this difficult time. So please let us know. And we really look forward to launching a whole new series of content for you and to seeing you on the other side of this chaos, but to, in the meantime, taking advantage of it and making the most of it.